Hey, RecLess fans. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving break. I'm here to introduce our 54th episode. It was recorded live at the Oklahoma Recreation and Park Society State Conference in beautiful Norman, Oklahoma. Boomer sooner. Because it was recorded live, we didn't get a chance to properly introduce our two guests. Jason Olsen is the Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Norman, Oklahoma, and Jeff Edwards is the Executive Director and CEO of the River Parks Authority. Now enjoy the episode. On to the show.
Welcome to Season 3 of RecLess, the podcast making you smarter and more knowledgeable about the field of parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country who are joined by a surprise guest each episode. We're glad you're here. We hope you enjoy the ride. This is RecLess.
Okay, welcome everybody to the RecLess podcast. My name is Shane Mize. I'm one of the hosts, Jay, right here on the screen, coming to us from Concord, North Carolina, and then Tom here as well. Tom, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, good to be here. Tom Venniro from Parma, New York, and I met some of you yesterday. And welcome to our first ever RecLess live. I mean, we've done them in person before, but never live. So this is exciting.
And you'll realize why we don't do them live, I'm sure, pretty quickly. We usually start with a little banter. There's not much banter we'll start today, but we did go to a sandwich shop called the Midway Deli, and we ran into somebody.
Can I guess?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to guess pretty quickly. I'm sure most people will be able to guess.
I have a great story about this guy, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but go ahead.
But and I actually wasn't surprised when I saw him walk in because I knew he lived off Campus Corner. But Tom, do you want to say who we saw?
Well, yeah. But first, Jay, maybe you can guess. He was an NFL head coach of the first evil empire for your Buffalo Bills. So not the Patriots, but who was the first? Maybe the first team that the Bills had pretty.
And as a clue, I think he was the first person to win a national championship as a college football player at Arkansas. Won a national championship as a coach at Oklahoma, and then won a Super Bowl as a coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, I don't believe you're running into Jimmy Johnson, but I could be wrong.
Oh, well.
Just after.
It's Barry Switzer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Very nice. That's awesome.
One table over from us, so it's very cool.
Yeah, it was. I'd never obviously seen Barry Switzer before, but it was so interesting because I had made a comment to Shane after that. There are two professions or titles that you get that you always have. One's the president, Mr. President, and then coach. Everybody in there is calling him coach. Hey, coach, good to see you, coach. And there's 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds working behind the counter who, how would they know who Barry Switzer is?
Yeah, except he's probably there every day. Yeah,
They know he's the king.
Yeah, for sure. What's your story?
So Jason Olsen, the director of Parks and Rec, and we get the opportunity to work with a lot of variety of people because we're right here in a college town. Coach is one of them. Coach actually has a scoreboard company where he goes and gives free scoreboards to communities. And in exchange, he owns the advertising rights on them. They're actually full LED boards. So he's working with us, and our city attorney got a hold of it and had a little bit of a disagreement with some of the contract language. And so as we were going back and forth, they would not accept it. And eventually, Coach comes up to City Hall and ended up in the city clerk's office, and there was a whole trail of all the city clerk admins walking into our office, and what the heck's going on? Following him, it's like Coach Switzer sits down, and Jason, and tells all the ladies thank you, and they're all gushing over Coach, and eventually he just looks at me and goes, "Jason, what in the hell am I going to have to do to give you some goddamn free score?"
There you go. I guess y'all figured it out.
Yeah, we eventually got over there, but it's genius. And then I eat out at Midway Deli occasionally, and of course he knew my name a few weeks before. But then I was eating lunch with a buddy, and he goes, "Oh yeah, this Coach. Yeah, I know Coach. We worked together." And about 5 minutes later, he walked up, "Hey Josh, how you doing?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, it's kind of a little inflating on that self-esteem, but it's all good."
That Tom and I were sitting at an open table, and someone came up to us and told us we were sitting in their table. It's like church or whatever. Like we were sitting on someone's row. But we have Jason here, and so Jason, we'll start with Jason. Jason and I stole all this from LinkedIn. This isn't how we normally do this, obviously, but
don't tell him last time.
Yeah, it's not obviously true. Right now the director of Norman, previously had been a rec superintendent and a rec supervisor. Has his organizational leadership degree from Southern Nazarene University. I was going to ask you something.
Sure.
The name Natalie Finley ring a bell to you at all?
I think so. Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think y'all were at that school at the same time.
Okay.
Hannah, my wife, the editor, that's my old girlfriend. So don't. Long time ago, but she went to Southern Nazarene. But I was going to talk to you specifically about the new Young Family Athletic Center.
Oh, yeah.
That is an incredible facility. We got to tour it yesterday. It seemed like it was you said it was an over close to $40 million project?
Yeah, all in, including land purchase and design contracts, were somewhere around about $48 million.
Okay. It's something I want to ask both of y'all. It's something that we don't want to get into the political side of anything necessarily, but this is a conservative state. That's not a shock to anyone that saw any type of results or any of the previous.
I think the only state that went all red.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And
every county.
But as a park and rec professional, I think sometimes people outside of that state would think that's tough to do quality of life things. But, the gathering place, which we'll get to with the River Authority and this Young Athletic Center, both of them can be completely funded or supporting quality of life initiatives. And so is it really all that tough to do quality of life initiatives in a more maybe conservative state, or do you just have to find different funding mechanisms for that?
So that's funded through a half-cent sales tax. It was 15 years. Yes, it is hard. Everything that anytime you go and ask voters for a tax initiative to fund something, parks and recreation, it's difficult. We've had ultra success in the city of Norman, passing just about every school bond, very popular.
Sure.
Streets, very popular. And
police and public safety.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a little tough to get the parks and rec over the finish line. But this was an instance that you had some influential people in town that basically got all together, and they're like absolutely sick of going to Arkansas or Texas, Kansas, Wichita, Dallas to do youth sports. And so they got together and they put together this package, and it was very diverse. I mean, it had money for libraries, had money for parks, had monies for a brand new swimming pool, what was going to be an indoor swimming pool, and a basketball gym, which were separate projects, and eventually got joined to make the Young Family Athletic Center. They came together to put together a very diverse program that went to the voters, and basically you had an interest group for just about every single person in town, and it passed at 72%.
Which is incredible.
Yeah, it's good. And it was $150 million over 15 years. And that was partly one of the things that it funded. And when you talk about the Young Family Athletic Center as a whole, did a session this morning. I talked about basically like the city of Norman hit a lottery, because there was a lot of things that the stars had perfectly aligned for all those things to happen. If you're a community, I'll give you a little bit of roadmap of how to do this. You have to get a future NBA All-Star to grow up in your town. He has to go to your after-school programs, and he has to play your little basketball.
Specific.
He went to my after-school program, and I was telling this story earlier. I should have been fired because I actually, the Young family, knew them very well, and they grew up in the rec center. I exchanged free childcare for free Chili's because mom was a manager at Chili's. Had a lot of baby back ribs. Yeah,
right over here at the ranch.
That's a new one, but it used to be on the south part of town.
Okay, cool.
So between that and our hospital authority, which was actually going through a bond initiative at the exact same time, and of course the Norman Ford initiative that happened at the exact same time, that lined up where we're able to put together an awesome facility like that.
Yeah. I think just to kind of tee off of that, and with a lot of park professionals in the room here, we always feel like, Oklahoma's last to the table for a lot of things. We see a lot of trends happen early on the East and West Coast. And I don't know if it's because we're just stubborn or if it's because it just takes that long for, like say, Oklahoma, the center of the universe, to kind of catch up to things. But really, to really kind of tee off of Jason's sentiment there, it takes a community and a story to tell. And if you're not telling your story, then you're probably not moving forward. So you just got to continue to tell that story.
And both of y'all, so Jeff is with the River Authority.
Yep, River Parks Authority in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
And specifically has a lot of acres, but probably what is something that a lot of people talk to you about is the gathering place itself, right?
Yeah, it's America's favorite city park, voted twice now by USA Today.
I saw that
was
USA Today.
voted that again in 2024. It's also America's largest privately funded public park. It's a $400 million park that's for the community of Tulsa. Really spearheaded by the philanthropic community. But you think about an individual like George Kaiser, who made his money in Oklahoma, and he made it through Oklahoma Resources. It's the oil and gas industry. And he said, the profits that I saw from that, I want to give back to my community. And he did that exactly through that park itself. And he was able to really spearhead a campaign that got a ton of philanthropic individuals on board for.
And I think in the quote unquote, the void that people fear will be there if you don't support quality of life initiatives. Either a faith-based community or another philanthropic organization normally does step in to fill that, whether it's the young family or whether it's Kaiser's and his family as well. I mean, you have that.
Yeah, the longer I advance in this career, it's all about networking and communicating, just having those partners in your hip pocket. When if you can tell your story along the way, and then it finally catches their ear and they catch on to it and it interests them, they've got a community of folks that are near endless. You hear Tulsa's the most giving community in America. That may be true. I would say raising funding in Tulsa is significantly easier than it is in any of the other municipalities surrounding Tulsa. It's just got a really good funding base.
And Jeff was a broadcast journalism major here
at OU.
So if we don't do a great job, he can just step in and take over at some point. But you transitioned from public sector to this, whatever we're calling this, a private sector?
Well, it's a public agency. So we're a public trust entity that was developed 50 years ago this year. So we turned 50 this year. Really preservation of the green space along the Arkansas River. So when you think about arguably Tulsa's most greatest natural resource, a river base, and development around that, communities would often have hotel developments there, high rises.
Sure.
Let's do an industrial development there. And this group of individuals in Tulsa at the time, led by the mayor, was saying, hey, we would like to preserve that so we can see the natural resource and the beauty of that. And so they did that. And it was through the River Parks Authority, with the city of Tulsa as one of our beneficiaries, and then Tulsa County as our other beneficiary. So,
have you seen your journalism degree actually help in the effort of pushing out that message?
Probably so. Just with the communications and you being able to tell your story,
sure.
and if you can tell it right the first time and get their attention immediately, as opposed to having to come back to them 2, 3, 4, 5 times, I think that's been beneficial. I was offered a job in TV graduating college, but I worked at the rec center, the Houston Huffman, as a student. And I'd worked there for 3 years. When I came back to them and said, hey, it's time for me to grow up and move on and get a job, they said, are you really going to leave us? And they actually offered me a job to stay. Television's horrible hours, nights and weekends, holidays. This was
Sure.
Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, pay the exact same amount. And so I stayed. And that's really what kind of, forced me into this career line.
Yeah.
And I'm sure.
Jeff, before we move on, do you have another stop in your career anywhere that was almost temporarily?
I don't know what you're talking about, Jason. No.
He worked for Norman Parks for about 5 or 6 months. But
That's not on his LinkedIn.
I wonder where that's missing.
It's not on LinkedIn. It didn't happen.
Jeff, I'd like to ask you, you just mentioned storytelling. We talk about that a lot. I know we've got a lot of people in the audience that probably know a little bit about the Gathering Place. And I apologize for that for our audience. That's not really normal for the show, but we're going to have listeners who listen to this who don't know a whole lot about the Gathering Place or the Young Family Athletic Center. So we've mentioned the Gathering Place and talked about it on our podcast a few times. I'm not sure in what context. I think it was just, hey, this would be a great place to visit. So I looked it up, and it's incredible. So you mentioned storytelling. Can you tell our listeners and maybe people in the audience who haven't been there, take us through that facility, because it's phenomenal.
Yeah, so I think it'd be important just to note, maybe right off the bat, while the Gathering Place is part of the River Parks Authority, we own the land, and it's within our jurisdiction for the landscape that we maintain for the citizens of Tulsa and the surrounding communities. It's a privately run park, but publicly accessible. So it's a $10 million operation a year that's all privately funded. $10 million a year. My budget from the public side is $3 million a year. So you kind of see that difference. But, George Kaiser and the George Kaiser Family Foundation, which is really the organization that spearheaded this whole thought process, were great friends of River Parks prior to the vision of a gathering place in that facility. He really wants to concentrate on programming, covering different demographics, covering different ethnicities. So you're going to see from the gathering place, it's not your typical park and rec agency. They do a lot of cultural events, and they are very heavily programmed. So when you think about a staff like ours, we're maybe more heavily geared towards maintenance. Theirs is heavily geared towards programming. But as you enter this property and this landscape, it's almost like they tried to preserve as much of the old landscape, the tree canopy, and all of that as they could, so that you felt like you were walking into a natural environment. And then on top of that, it's got playgrounds from outside of this country.
They look like it looked like a bird when you're.
It is. Yeah, they were all custom themed for this specific park. So there's not
by a
a
group out
playground.
in Denmark, right?
Yeah, Denmark. Yeah, there's not a playground like it anywhere else. So, as you think about how do we attract folks, how do we attract families to even come here? Well, you do that through nice playground features like that, and they're grand and mass and scale. They've got a huge slide area that adults enjoy. They've got, everything from a skate park to pickleball, basketball, and everything in between. But it's, how do we get folks here to enjoy that? And then once they're there, they realize the full potential of that programming. Really, this is a heavily programmed park area that these staffers are offering to the community and then really to travelers, because it's really one of the true destinations in Tulsa for folks to travel to.
Yeah, it's a destination space. You mentioned it's public lands, but is there any fee to?
No, it's all free and open to the public, and it's considered part of River Parks network.
Okay.
But it just so happens that a private individual said, "I'm going to fund the operations for this park for the next 100 years." That's
so
phenomenal.
$10 million a year for 100 years.
Yeah.
That's. He's not a Parks and Rec director.
No, I imagine they want to tighten that budget up a little bit, but they're 6 years now in operations. They've been open 6 years as of this year, and they really wanted to hit the ground strong and pretty heavy. Tony Moore was the first executive director. He's gone on now to Harold Simmons Park in Dallas, the Dallas area. So he was from Disney. Julio Badin is now the current executive director. He's from Disney. So as you can see, they're really trying to.
But they got rid of that Disney bullshit. They brought you in.
They did when they brought me in. I said, "Hey, I'm not going to be your Disney guy. I'm going to be your practical guy. If you need to cut a budget somewhere, I can probably help you. But if you need to grow a program, you're on your own."
So Jeff, I want to follow up on a couple of things that you just touched on, because I'm on the website. I have the luxury of being able to kind of peruse through the site and look at this facility, and it's absolutely incredible. You mentioned it's public, you mentioned it's privately funded, and it's free, but there are a lot of opportunities to host events. Are there revenue goals that the park has to try to hit on a regular basis, even though it is privately funded?
Certainly, they do have revenue goals. I wouldn't say that's one of their primary focuses, but they have they have a restaurant on site. They have the ability to rent out spaces. They have a phenomenal lodge center that's typically open to the public, and you can just come and hang out, enjoy the space, read a book, look out into this mass wall of glass and into the park. But really, I wouldn't say, that's a primary focus. Their real centric primary focus is to program and to engage with citizens.
Yeah.
You were Park and Rec director of an agency before you took this role.
Yeah.
Any imposter syndrome or any types of nerves going into this? What might have felt like a place that was run by Disney execs at one time?
Yeah.
Again, that the gathering place is just a very small part, and I'm fortunate in that they have their own public body board. They have an executive director too. They really kind of run their operations, and I just get to help them manage that land resource and really negotiate through
almost more like
our resources,
a board or something.
Yeah, our resources, like through the city, through a land management agreement. But yes, when the River Parks Authority Executive Director job became available, I actually hadn't applied for it at first. And I had an individual come to my work in Sand Springs, which is a small community just west of Tulsa. Very much knew about the job, knew the previous executive director, knew of their work, knew of their mission. I'm an Ironman competitor, so I'd competed in Ironman and really use the River Parks Trail Network as a means to get to that goal and that training effort. An individual came to my office and goes, "Why haven't you applied for that job yet?" And I go, "Well, I'm really happy where I'm at." And it was my hometown. I grew up in Sand Springs. I felt like I was giving back to the very thing that there were so many things as a kiddo that I wanted, and I wanted to provide that then back to them. And he goes, but you've done that. And so you can take a step further. So now I often say, kind of to make a long story short, I often say it's the change I didn't know I needed. Because it really opened my eyes to just this different door and a totally different line of work. You come from municipal government work where I had a golf course, a senior center, museum, community center, parks, trails, all of those things combined, a nature preserve through Keystone Ancient Forest, all of those things combined with your limited staffing resource and move to an agency like River Parks. And I'm going to tell everybody 22 years from now when I retire, this job is the best job in the state of Oklahoma. I promise you it is. But when they were looking for somebody, they actually looked worldwide. I say worldwide, nationwide, for the replacement of the director. And one of the individuals on the board that had hired me, they said we had no idea of the talent that we had just in the community right next to us. So again, it's like, I wasn't as maybe outgoing with telling our story, but once I got in the room, it's like, hey, you got to tell that story even more. And so really it's been a blessing to transition to that now for the last 2 years.
And Jeff, too, another thing to brag on, that they have one of the nation's largest Oktoberfest there as well. And I mean, when you talk about something that's cool, and I mean, it's not, it's literally people from all over the United States coming to Tulsa to party at one of his parks.
When I interviewed for the job, the River Parks Network, just to kind of paint the picture for everybody, we're 26 miles of paved trail connected to the community of Sand Springs into downtown Tulsa, and then onward south into Jinx. Along the arc, so we're really land steward development of the Arkansas River in Tulsa County. So we have the ability to expand. But what's so great is we've taken these trail systems, a means for cycling, running, hiking. We manage Turkey Mountain, which has now about an $18 million project that we've infused money into. Maybe Tulsa's greatest mountain biking destination now. So all of these things. So when I hired in, I said, hey, we're going to do quality over quantity. How many times, though, are our city managers or our mayors or other folks saying, hey, we need to get more, we need to grow more, we need to get bigger, we need to do all that? It's quality over quantity, right? And so I think that message really resonated with the hiring committee when they said, hey, we've got great assets. You're right, we don't need to grow more. Turkey Mountain was once a place that people did not go to because it was viewed as a place that, sexual predators hung out at and that the homeless population hung out at. And so how do you shift that mindset to then it to be one of Tulsa's greatest natural resources in conjunction with the gathering place? And George Kaiser Family Foundation kind of helped us spring that one along. So it's really just this cycle of, capitalizing on those gains like that. And for anybody listening, it's quality over quantity. And I think there's something to be said about that, and it can go a long way.
We've had some people on before. I think our industry gets marginalized and maligned a little bit on you can only do the bottom end or the base level. I mean, you just built this new facility, 122,000 square feet. Was there at any point a concern that they were going to want SFM or another type of facility management company to come in and run that facility, or were they fine with?
Yeah, so they're actually one of the applicants at the beginning. And just to say this, and people that are around here, and not surprised, Norman's a college town.
Sure.
There's a lot of things that are unique about college towns, and we have people that are very passionate about our park system and things that go on in here. And there are city council members, or mayor, love to listen to the public. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that gets passed along with that. So you're trying to take all these opinions and ideas of how this place should be looked at and ran by, and trying to put all these puzzle pieces together where you satisfy a large majority of the public. And especially when you talk about this, the Young Family Athletic Center, we had so many expectations. We had swim teams. One of the reasons that we have a Norman Ford program was a group called Pisces, and they started basically investing in this group that went out and lobbied for indoor swimming places. We had the Optimus Club, which does our baseball, football, and basketball, and they have viewpoints of how this should be run. And we have volleyball clubs that think this how it should be run. And then you have the corner of another one that's just like, well, we don't even need a rec center. We're putting too much money into this, and so you're sitting there trying to balance this. So we actually we thought we were going to have this operated by an outside agency, and the facilities group was one of that.
We had JD Wood, who works for them currently on it recently too.
Yeah, and he came by and visited with us, or they visited with us. That we interviewed with them. We ultimately picked a group out of Oklahoma City, Santa Fe Family Life Center. They do have a great operation out there, but this came to the conclusion as we were going through there, and we're, as a city, trying to get them to sign contracts or get into a contract with each one of these community groups, so that they make sure that they had insurance of a place inside the center. And they couldn't get across the finish line. And we eventually came to the realization the city is probably to make sure that we get all those boxes checked, and make sure that we have a future and hopefully have a Norman Ford too, where we can go out and get another $200 million to projects here in 5 years. We wanted to make sure that this, which is the most highly publicized, most expensive piece of the whole Norman Ford program, that it does really good. I think we did that better by letting the city operate it, because we can go in there, we can take a little bit of hit. We don't have to sit there and break even though hopefully our finance director is not listening. It's more important to know that, one, that we're checking those boxes and showing the community that voted for this building to happen that you are our number one priority. But on another hand, we have this facility where 30 weekends a year we are having basketball tournaments that are literally bringing in people from what we call them live tournaments. So they call them live tournaments, and they're sponsored by shoe brands. And usually a first-year facility doesn't get one of these tournaments. We were lucky enough to have Tryon, which he's sponsored by Adidas. So we got an Adidas Girl Live event last year. I had over 200 teams. They were here, played for 3 straight days, had at least one team from every state. And at the same time, we had 400 NCAA coaches that were attending these games and watching all these games over here, the whole day. When Visit Norman, our visitor bureau group, of course, they invested in this program, make sure we got here. They put out the seed money to make sure that we got this tournament and checked all those boxes. When they did their financial analysis at the end of it, this 3-day tournament had a $1.9 million impact on our community. And we're just kind of looking at that when you're in year 10, and hopefully you're still getting these tournaments, but year in 10, and you have a $2.5 million budget that has 23 people that are employed over there. Hopefully when they realize when we're end up $300,000 or $400,000 short of breaking even and paying for itself, hopefully they remember these events that we come in here. Man, we just did $1.9 million for one tournament, and this one tournament generated $400,000 in sales tax.
Yeah, it's kind of that unrealized gain that we all don't get to see as park and recreation professionals, unless we talk a lot, which I do with our Tulsa Regional Tourism and our Chamber of Commerce about that hotel motel sales tax. Even a place like the Gathering Place, it's bringing folks in from around the world. They're staying in Tulsa. They're eating and shopping and dining and doing all of those things. So while we may not be seeing the direct dollar come back to us as the agency, it's definitely being infused into that community. And one thing I didn't really capitalize on kind of that, less is more and quality over quantity, as Jason mentioned. One of maybe 4 events that we, look across this room, guys, and how many of us are saying, hey, we try and do like 24 events a year.
Yeah.
We try and do 2 a month. And sometimes less is more, right? So we host 4 kind of major events a year. Tulsa's a little bit unique because we have 3 park agencies. We have the City of Tulsa Park Agency, we have a Tulsa County Park Agency, and then we have the River Park Authority.
Parks.
So we have a lot of working elements there. But for those 4 events, Oktoberfest this year was rated #1 Oktoberfest in the nation by USA Today. Tulsa's well been known for a phenomenal Oktoberfest, top 5 in the world for venues and spaces. But we do that because we put so much focus and energy year round into that one event so that you can make it a bang event. It's about a $7 million event to produce. And then it probably brings in about 15 million in potential impact to the economy. So it's, again, focusing more on the intricate details of making things so special and so unique that you don't have to, I mean, you're working on that event all year, but it's not like I've got to work on that event plus 23 others, which can be so hard for a lot of programming staff because programming's draining on folks. It really is.
It's tough to be creative that many times.
Yeah. Economic impact is obviously something we don't tell the story enough of, but there could be some potential, pitfalls or maybe some byproducts that we don't think of. So I wanted to actually ask, and I can ask both of you, but Jason, I want to start with you with the new facility that you have here. We got a chance to talk yesterday, and I believe you had made a comment to me, and I hope this isn't something you didn't want to share with everybody, but it was about the last 5 years of your life, right? And how much dedication that you put. And I got to speak to Mitchell about now his current role and how his current role is this facility and the management. My former director and the agency that I was with previously, they have the most recent community center in our area. It's about 4 years old, beautiful facility. And my former director, Mike, he told me, he goes, be careful what you wish for. Make sure you're doing all the due diligence to the point of everybody who wants to come in and use this facility. Do we have the proper infrastructure? Do we have the hotels? Do we have space for this? Obviously, you're a college town. You've probably got a lot of that infrastructure that was already in place and it was well thought out. But can you just maybe give us a little cautionary tale or some advice of those who are looking to go ahead and put in a facility of that magnitude? What are some of the challenges and what are some of the things that may get overlooked while you're in the process?
Well, first of all, and me and Jeff have grown up in Oklahoma and ORPS, and you look around the room and literally me and you are sitting together at a conference somewhere in Oklahoma 20 years ago, and we were one of the young guys in this room, and we were watching other people that became leaders and directors and over large park units, and kind of like I was talking to you the other day, is that at some point the fun jobs, actually the jobs that are most rewarding, and where you're going to enjoy is probably that rec center supervisor job. You actually see rewards. You see evidence of when you go out and do an after-school program and make a connection with that child, and you see them grow up, do something else like I did with Tryon. When you go out and do programs, you get to see a reward of that program that you organize when you have 500 people or 1,000 people out in the middle of a park watching a movie, or when you put together a daddy-daughter dance. There are true rewards out there.
And you work just as hard as one of those $7 million events, right? You're really working hard to get 500 people there.
And it's difficult. It is truly rewarding. And the farther, when you become a division manager and eventually work yourself into a director role, I will tell you those rewards and that instant gratification, it's just not there as many times. And how do you, as a leader, and you're literally your job is basically to hop from one situation to make sure that's okay to another. You get handed a facility that has very high expectations because it's basically you're building a $40 million that there's a large contingency that hey, we should be investing this in homeless, or we should be doing these other affordable housing projects. So you feel like you're fighting for legitimacy on the one portion. And especially when you're building a facility during COVID, and we talked about this yesterday, you're hopping from one situation where you're like, oh, okay, I hit my construction goals, we're good. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I missed this, or I got this change order, or you got a design firm that comes back to you and says that, we're exceeded our hours, so we need another $300,000 to finish the project. you turn around, you have to go back to council, you have to do another study session, and it's draining. I will tell you, it's draining. It's very hard. Your rewards look a lot different from when you're in a director's position than from when you're in a rec center supervisor position. And my advice is truly soak it in. When you're out there as a rec center supervisor, you should have goals to move up and figure out what you're going to do in your career. I always thought my goal was to be a rec manager, then everybody kept on retiring in front of me, and I guess they liked me or something, so they kept on promoting me. But enjoy the rewards you're getting, but also have your goal set, because as you move up in your career and you're dealing with, I call city council members politics. I mean, it's true politics.
Sure.
You're working the politics. You're moving from one situation to another, and you know what the goal is. Your city manager knows what the goal is. Your other department heads, which if you work in a good functional city, they feel the pain, and they share the rewards with you when you ribbon cut it, or ribbon cut a large facility or a large project that you've been working on. But you just have to enjoy. The rewards basically become different. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. Instead of seeing that kid finally, you get your homework done, or they make that basketball team where you've been playing with them outside, or y'all do some special project that gets together, and you get the instant gratification. Rewards aren't there as much, and you're jumping from area to area to take care of different fires.
Before you hop in, Jay, I think we've talked about it before on the podcast,
Yes.
But when you get a chance to be a director, you think, I'm gonna come in and do the things that I want to do. I'm gonna square every circle. I'm gonna make everything. I'm gonna make every decision. And what you find out in the director role is some of those circles are circles. You don't get to square any of them, and they are what they are. And I think we've said it before, but definitely enjoy the time you're at. Sure, everyone thinks at some point maybe they want to be a director, and there are great things about being a director. I don't want to act like there's not, but don't get to it a second before you're ready, because it will test you.
It'll break you if it can.
Yeah,
Definitely.
There is definitely some hard times if it's an employee issue, or you make a promise to the public that you're opening this big project on this certain date, and you realize you're not going to hit that date, and then you have to break the news. Or if you realize that your project you worked your ass off to get to a $40 million budget, and then all of a sudden you realize when it goes out to bid date, it comes in at $43 million.
Yeah.
It's not fun going back and breaking the news and trying to figure out how to make up that delta. I will say it is glorious. Probably one of the best days of my career was cutting a ribbon. We cut a lot of ribbons. So like I said, we've had 15 projects in the past couple of years in adult wellness, which is a senior center. Basically, they don't like to be called seniors in Norman. Adult wellness and education center. That was another project that we had that lasted. It was over a decade, and seniors in communities, they vote very heavy, and they in Norman, they were pissed for a long time they didn't get their senior center. Finally got that one across the finish line, and that's one of the check boxes. But it's the same thing. It's just that you're doing things, and you're dealing with a group of people that are pissed off because you won't get done what they want, and there's not a whole lot of rewards until you actually figure out you can get that across the finish line.
I think we can all say this, because I don't know of a whole lot of professionals in our industry that immediately jump into the director role, not having been a coordinator or a manager of some sort. But how many times have we all also sat there and said, "What in the heck is wrong with my boss today, my director?"
Mm-hmm.
Like they're irritated, they're edgy.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, know that for all of those out there listening that may be in a coordinator position and are looking to maybe potentially move up, the director holds back so much information that it's not that we're not at liberty to share, it's that we don't want you to be burdened with the trials and tribulations. Yeah, we're protecting our employees. So I think
disappointing them at a rate they can handle.
Yeah, I think a good director can do that and accommodate that. So
yeah, that's very well said.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with a former guest of ours, Katie Keller. We worked together for many years, and she got her first director job probably 3 years ago now. And she called me probably a year in, and she said, "I never realized how much you shielded from us." And she thanked me for that. But at the same time, she's like, wow, I never realized like how much behind the scenes conversations were taking place with senior leadership or elected officials. And on one hand, it's a good thing, and you want to do that because you want your staff to focus on their responsibility so they can excel. But on the other side, maybe there is a little bit more that we need to open up so they see some of that, so they're not sticker shocked when they get, or if they get into that role, so they have some understanding of what to expect. And maybe there's got to be a balance there. But I want to go back to one other thing you said, Jason, with, when you're in that role as a supervisor or a manager and you become a director, your goals change. I think one thing that's really key that I've had a lot of conversations with people that have gotten into a director role, that you don't always realize that time commitment you're going to lose on the other things that really motivated you, the programs you mentioned or the events. So it's really important to still, like, if you can, in some capacity, find time to still understand that why you got into what you're doing, so that you are always, energized to continue that push. So it's not always the negative challenges or the budget problems or the staffing issues, but you still have, whether it's 15 minutes a week to like go out, see a rec center, see a program, see something take place that kind of keeps that energy alive. So the impact you're making is always going to be positive, even if you're not seeing it on your day-to-day operations.
You always got to have that Neely bot sitting on your shoulder, don't you?
Yeah, and it's true.
Why?
We had the same director for Norman, and I never understood, like, why does my boss or my director never come by the rec center? And now that I'm in that position, guess what? I'm not going by that rec center very often, you do have these preconceived notions as like, hey, this is the way I would do this in this situation. And you learn good things from your bosses, you learn good things from your city managers, you learn good things from directors, but you also learn how to be a better boss because you see their faults. And I hope my faults and you guys are seeing our faults and you're figuring out how to improve on that. It's kind of, it's just, you also learn from your mistakes. When I'm out there, if I went out there and every project that we build or every time that I threw out a budget and I got single thing I requested, I wouldn't learn a damn thing.
You'd be the police chief.
Yeah, exactly. In Norman, public works director. You learn from, how do I document this better, or how do I put more details into my request, or, well, this portion of that failed, so how can I take that failure, wrap that up and represent this in a different way when that time comes. So this is that you have to absorb those, and you have to understand that, turn your negatives into a positive, because those negatives are truly how you learn from situations to become a better director.
I think the messaging, we talked about the impact that y'all are having in y'all spaces with the quality of life you're providing. But at one time, the saying is, what gets measured gets managed, right? And that's personal and professional. If the police chief or the public works director can show that more streets or a crew makes more sense than this bench or this other quality of life initiative or just money for a special event, if there's a $5,000 special event or a $5,000 widget that public works can get, it's much easier for them to say, oh, if I don't have this widget, we're 7 seconds slower, or we got to rent it. There's this expense to the city. But what quality of life is, it's an investment, right? It's almost the same thing like we were talking the other day, like a self-defense class, right? Like, or a gym membership, right? If you compare it to the cable bill or you compare it to your cell phone payment, it could compare in such a way that you would think one's more important than the other. But if you've taken some jiu-jitsu class for 6 months and you walk across a dark parking lot on a Friday night and you feel confident and you're not scared, you realize where that quality of life is. All of a sudden you realize what that investment meant. Yeah. Or the same thing with, losing weight or gaining strength or getting faster, whatever you're picking up at the Young Family Athletics Center or whatever. And so it's one of those things that what we do is very tough to measure. You can't measure smiles. I can't show you had 1 million smiles come through last year. And so there are obviously measurements, how many people are coming through the rec center or whatever, but the true impact, both of y'all have talked about in the economic development side, is huge. And you don't see the realization of those, but you're speaking to those in such a way. So when you're $300,000 short, you can say, yeah, maybe our budget in whatever general fund or whatever line this hides out is $300,000 short, but somebody made $4.9 million on top of it over the last 3 or 4 years as well. And so I think our why isn't just about us, but it's the department why, it's the industry why as well. But really being able to sell that, because in a budgetary process, let's say all council members want to be best intention. They want to give you every single thing you ask for. And they also want to give Public Works every single thing they ask for. They want to give PD every single thing they ask for. And so the request is 80 million and the budget is 40 million for a city. Well, they do have to make cuts. I get that. And sometimes it's a boom lift versus a special event program. But being able to sell why that special event program is so important is really on us. That's the role. That's our task.
I want to tell a quick story real quick, because how many of us have been charged with, hey, write me an annual report?
Yeah.
It takes a long time. And who reads it? Because it's so comprehensive and long, right? So, and I've been charged with that in the past. But when I stepped into my new role as the director and CEO of River Parks, I was really kind of asked by the board, hey, we used to get updates, and that'd be kind of nice to continue. Well, these updates are bullet points you have to get with everybody on your staff. You have to, bring them all together. It's really, to me, it's busy work. It's wasted hours. So I took a leap of faith, and I said, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to do my own thing. So I do what's called a RPA, River Parks Authority, weekly snapshot. It's one snapshot picture, something that happened in the park that week. Most of it's user based. And if our elected officials and our philanthropic community, everybody that's on this email lists, which takes me, and I did one today, even though I'm at conference, I got my laptop with me. It took me 5 minutes to make this, to tell my story about something significant that happened in the park. And they get 52 of those a week if they're lucky, and I don't miss a week, right? But as you continue to tell that story year round, as opposed to culminating all this data into one document that, let's be honest, nobody reads. Right. Again, it's back to that telling your story along the way. Do you know how many City of Tulsa city councilors, our philanthropic community, really a lot of these people they're millionaires and they have better things to do, how appreciative they are of that? And they've told me that. They're like, hey, it's short, it's concise, it's sweet, it's to the point. I get exactly what you're doing, and it tells me your story. So, for anybody that maybe cares to be included on that, feel free to hit me up on an email, but you'll begin to kind of see how that story is told. And we've actually had other really agencies in Tulsa, and I just kind of came up with that snapshot as, hey, it's a picture, and I'm giving you a snapshot of the week. And we have other agencies now using that same dialogue in Tulsa. So it's really a quick glance at hey, here's something significant that happened that week. And really then it takes that burden of work off of your staff and you yourself. Nobody likes writing annual reports. They're horribly to write.
Sure.
So,
and if you have a $500 or $5,000 or $50,000 special event, the idea to invest in maybe a person to actually operate a camera with a really nice camera versus these iPhone photos that I normally take at an event will help with that. Jay and Tom, we had Tom O'Rourke on. I think Jay brought it up. He did a presentation one time at NRPA, and he never said a word. He just got up there and showed photos of slides. And I think what was it? Why Parks Matter or something to that extent?
Yeah, it was a speed session, and it was labeled, our profession is the best profession. And literally we sat down, he went through 30, 50 photos, and at the very end, he said, this is why our profession is the best profession. And it was just a plethora of stories being told through pictures that he didn't need to talk about the pictures. You can see that, somebody won a basketball game by hitting that buzzer. Someone learned how to ride a bike. Someone learned how to swim. Someone made a friendship at a senior program by connecting through a Pilates class. And, all these things that we do that you can just tell the impact it is just by seeing it. And Jeff, I love that concept of a weekly snapshot. I'm probably going to steal that myself.
Well, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
It's knowing your audience, right? Our Facebook, our Instagram, our social media feeds don't give you 106 pages of one piece of content for you to. It's a photo. Yeah. It's a graphic. It's bold font. It's telling you what they're telling you. It's a 30-second clip or whatever, and then you scroll to the next thing. So even if you don't consume it that way, 90% of the people who are on those things are your constituents. That's how they consume it, right? So speaking to them in that way.
Right. Yeah. Also, just have that either demographic data or that hard data in your hip pocket that So, like if you ask me right now, hey, sell me on why the River Parks Authority does phenomenal work for Tulsa and is of value of that. Well, for the users per year that we bring through the River Park system, it costs them $3 to use our park for the entire year. $3.
Yeah.
I'm willing to pay for 100 of those folks to come use the park, right?
Yeah.
So know that data. Also know what your staff does, what their capabilities and inabilities are. Know that for every one maintenance staffer that we have, it takes them all day to pick up after 500 people who use the park. When your city councilors hear that and say, "Hey, how many of you pick up after two kids? How hard is that?
Yeah.
Imagine picking up after 500 every day of the week, 7 days a week."
We use placer data.
Yeah, I was about ready to hop into some placer data. We do the exact same thing. So, and when we talk about our North Ford, I get to present a monthly basis on special events, and somehow, because I'm the liaison for the city to our Visit Norman board. So he usually the Visit Norman CEO comes up and presents with me. But we use all our placer data, especially on our North Forward projects, and it gives you, even though it's kind of freaky and everybody thinks they opt out of it, you really don't opt out of it. It's tied into apps. It's not tied into anything that you use on your phone. So if you're using these apps and you agree to use them, the only way you can use them is that you get traced by it. But the data that comes through here, and we'll use YFAC or Young Family Athletic Center as an example. We, in a monthly basis, can tell how many people have walked through those doors. We also can tell their dwelling time, which is when our first month we opened, we had 53,000 people that walked through that door, and we saw our dwelling time was over 2 hours. We also knew where they came from and where they went immediately afterwards. And when you start talking about, and this is the kind of data you need to present to your city council so they understand, when you end up $300,000 short, when your revenues are $300,000 short, but hey, guess what? I had 50,000 people walk through here this month, and 2% of them went to Torchy stock.
Right.
And 12% of them stayed at the Embassy Suites. So you have all this data that kind of lines back up. So, I do kind of make things up and, answer from the hip some of the time. And every time I have a lot of staff members that come when I do a study session because they don't know what the policy will be right after I say something, because from the cuff, it always scares them to death, and you see them shaking their head in the background. But when you actually have real data to back up what's going on, or how this facility is being used, or how this park's being used, or why are we shutting down Main Street to do a Halloween event every single year? This is the data, and this is the reason why we're doing it.
So how do you, for smaller agencies out there, it's a
Placer's expensive
ticket, right? So how did you initially go about justifying this? I understand that you can tell stories now, but you didn't have that data before.
Knowledge is power, though. That's how you got to do it.
It is, and it comes through our city manager, the business development person that reports directly to the city manager office is in Parks, and she's put in there to work with us. So special events are our coordinator, and that was one of the requests. She's had it, and I didn't know it existed, but she's been on it for about 3 or 4 years, and I finally figured out. And hey, where's Mitchell at? Mitchell actually has a login, and I didn't know that until about 4 months ago. But I go there and ask her all these questions, and yes, it's about $60,000 a year. It is not cheap, and they develop that on the size of your community. So if you're a smaller community, the bill is going to be a lot cheaper. But
so you've got other departments in the agency are using it.
Yeah, our whole city's using it, and when we need information from her, we either have Mitchell log on there, or she gets it. But it's also when you're trying to recruit a business or something like that. We're trying to get a Buc-ee's or something to come to Norman. You're able to go to this intersection and draw a square around that, and you can find out exactly how many cars drive through that section of town.
And just to kind of tee off of that, because we don't have that program, but if you don't have that, find a resource that does. Fortunately, still Tulsa, we're top 3 or so community size in the state of Oklahoma. But even for some of the small municipalities surrounding that, you may have a business like this. I'm going to give you an example, Quick Trip. Then the founder of Quick Trip, Chet Cadjo, was a huge proponent of river parks. He advocated for us, and so just fortunately, by virtue of his inclusion in our network and really growing that park industry, we typically always have a QT representative on our board of trustees. And when one rolls off, another one rolls on. Well, guess who has that kind of data and information? Quick Trip does, because they're looking at store locations, where are cell phones pinging. So utilize those resources. If you can't do it on your own, more than likely you have a good partner somewhere within your network that you can lean on.
That's great. We've got, gentlemen, we got about 10 minutes left, and I don't know if you want to, stay true to form.
Let's fucking do it.
We want to learn a little bit more about you. All right, so a little bit more aside from it could be work related, might not be. So I'll shoot off here and go first and start with Jason. So Jay, I don't know if you picked up on the Young Family Athletics Center being Trey Young, and maybe you already knew that. Question before about who's the most famous person in your Rolodex. And I always think that's a fascinating, and you, obviously you're talking about some people that have some deep pockets as well. So maybe you could both answer that, and if it's not already who you had already, or maybe if it's already, someone else. I'm just curious because you work in pretty prominent areas.
Yeah, the phone on my phone, I have Trey's number in my phone. Greatest story I'll ever. I ended up. He was going to get married in the Caribbean somewhere. His dad, which was out of town at the time, calls me the day before they leave, and he goes, "Okay, I just heard from somebody that you need to get married in the United States before you actually get married over there." And then I'm like, "Oh, okay. What do you want, Ray?" He goes, "Hey, do you know somebody can get Trey married today before we go over there to the wedding?" And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." So he sends me Trey's number. I sit there, and one of my best friends in town is a district judge, so I got them actually hooked up. Took him down to the courthouse, went through there, stepped through there, helped him get his marriage license with his wife, which was freaking hilarious because she was just basically like, "Trey, we need to get this done now." So I understand, man. We're walking up to Judge Shepard's courtroom, and there are people in orange jumpsuits just walking back, like, "Hey, that's Trey Young," and Trey was like, "Oh," trying to protect. And they signed his marriage license, and just the weird things you get caught into because. And hopefully Rayford never hears this, but the running joke around the city
I promise he doesn't listen.
Oh, no, it's a zero chance. No offense.
None taken.
Everybody at the city calls him my daddy. So every time he calls, I'm like walking out of meetings, and I do whatever he wants. So, yeah. And I got Barry Switzer, even though he recognizes me as a completely different name than my actual name. Hey, thank you. Yeah. Good to hear from Josh. I have those two on my cell phone.
So just a follow-up question on that. Mitchell had let me know that Trey has his own locker or space in your facility, and that he will go and pick up basketball with the general public.
Generic public? Is that what you're looking at?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, he's a celebrity, right? We're all generic.
Generic public.
So over the summer, Tuesday night men's league that plays over in the YFAC, he did play pickup games, or he actually played on a team in that league.
Wow. I'm sure it was fun to play against that team.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how much effort he was putting in, but also too his 5% effort is better than 110% of mine.
Yeah. Well, how do you beat that? Right?
Surely you guys.
Yeah. I've got a good story that's relatable to one of our properties. I'll really kind of hit on, but when you talk about that Rolodex, I mean, obviously having somebody like George Kaiser in your network is a very good thing. Not only through GKFF, the foundation, but BOK. He owns Bank of Oklahoma as well, and now that's a multi-billion-dollar agency. And really, just that network is so well tied together to the roughly 80 to 90 other philanthropic networks in the Tulsa region. And again, kind of tying back to Tulsa's known as one of the most giving communities in America, and it really is. Long before the Gathering Place, George had a vision for riverfront and park environment. And I kind of talked about this earlier. It was all about, hey, I want to give back to the very community that made me who I am today. And he does that without even asking. Multiple times he's given the River Parks Authority, $12 million donations to, hey, I want you to go improve this. I've got a vision for you guys. Go make it happen. And he totally trusts that agency to go do that good work. They were really the strong proponent, and now the story I'll transition to Turkey Mountain and the development of that. It was really, and Turkey Mountain is along the Arkansas River. It's on our paved trail network. It's really directly tied in to the gathering place. It's only 2.5 miles roughly from the gathering place's front door, and you can get there via a protected trail network. So the close proximity of that on the river, you can really look out and see the gathering place from the upper portion of Turkey Mountain. But this property known as a place that nobody wanted to go to, it was drug use, it was homelessness, it was all this negative activity. But what a great natural resource. So implement that master plan campaign. It's been under construction now for 3 years. We've got 1 more year of work to do. Roughly $18 million. As we're navigating the landscape here, Progressive Trail Design is building our trail network there. And then we're going to do a staircase because although we call it Turkey Mountain, in Oklahoma, it's like a hill, right? But we've got about 150, 170 foot of elevation grade change. That property has some of the longest downhill mountain biking trails in Oklahoma. But, what do we have to work with? About 170 foot hill. All that to say, natural stone staircase. So we have the largest natural stone staircase in Oklahoma. And Progressive Trail Design is laying out this path for this new stone staircase, and they've specifically marked off an area. And we have an individual on our staff named Ryan Howe who's helping us manage that project. He was there at the site, and I don't know the movie. Maybe somebody could look it up for us real fast. A movie with Eva Longoria that was shot at Turkey Mountain. Do not recall the name. However, Eva Longoria during a cut took a nap on a rock. And so as Progressive Trail Design was navigating this area, Ryan said, you got to move that. So there's this weird chicane in this natural stone staircase at Turkey Mountain. And the only reason that's there is because they left the rock that Eva Longoria's butt sat on. And they call it the Eva Longoria butt rock.
That is an incredible story.
And I was half hoping someone in the audience would shout out the movie.
The movie that,
worth researching any movie from Longoria. So not mentioning your own agency or each other's agency, so it doesn't sound like you'll just mail this one in. What's another agency in Oklahoma? Because y'all are our first Oklahoma guests that we've had on the podcast. So for our audience, not so much here, but for all the folks listening that might not know a lot about Oklahoma, what's a hidden gem? And what other agency are you really impressed by, or has a really cool thing that other people
get to
might
talk about the last one you were at for the last 18 years?
Rats.
Oh,
You want to go first? I'll let you. This is so I can think of it.
This is a shameless plug, but I really do have to say that only because, I'm with the River Parks Authority, and we have a hiking destination, one that sees a lot of traffic and activity because it's a larger municipality. But I would stand to say that the greatest hiking destination in all of Oklahoma is the Keystone Ancient Forest in Sand Springs, Oklahoma. And that is where I came from.
Sure.
But we got to see this property flourish in development from really, really nothing. It was a project of studying climate change through the University of Arkansas. And this is what's so kind of tremendous about how these projects and these park environments evolve. So they're studying climate change, University of Arkansas, Dr. David Staley. And as they're studying climate change and the effect that has on trees, they're realizing, oh my God, you guys have old trees here. Individual named Irv Frank owned this piece of property. It's about 1,400 acres in size. And they came to him and they said, you're sitting on a gold mine of old growth native forest in Oklahoma. We're talking about trees dating back pre-Christopher Columbus.
Uh-huh. So
300-year-old post oak trees, 500-year-old cedar trees. Most of these trees are kind of protected by the rock formations of this area. So just super, super rich natural beauty. And it all folded into, became a grant project. And Irv Frank said, hey, I'll take the land for what it is at face value, whatever it sells over that, I'll give you the money back. It's a nature conservancy project, so it's got a conservation easement on it. And then it's run through a city municipal park system. Well, it's them really trying to tell that story to get folks to that resource. Because really, when you think about Oklahoma's history, they got so much history to tell you there. So just to kind of give you an example, the reason why I'm kind of talking about it on this is, Turkey Mountain is, while it may not be as good of a resource in terms
This should have
of
been a drinking game with Turkey Mountain.
in terms of that history, with Oklahoma's landscape and telling that story and that side of it, and really the evolution of it. I mean, Turkey Mountain was originally an oil drill well area, so a lot of oil rigs on it. But for it to evolve from we don't know what the heck is there to somebody who was just happened to be studying climate change, and now it's this preserved park space because of old growth forest and the education on that. And now I almost can't even remember where I was headed with that.
I don't know where you're going either, Jeff. Okay, so I'll go. I love the state parks here. We used to have our conference, ORPS conference, every single year was out in Wagner, Oklahoma, Sequoia State Park. It used to be Western Hills when we were out there. We'd always go out there this time of year. The trees would change colors, absolutely beautiful. They had a golf course and great places to go hang out outside, all these cabins, and perfect place to do a conference. Kind of disappointed that we don't go out there anymore. And I'll give a plug for one of our neighbors is that Moore, Oklahoma, which was just north of us, Central Park and the station. They're ahead of Norman when they were putting together the rec center and the park up there. They have great special events and this awesome rec center up there. Not so much of a hidden gem, but it's one of the places where I always get council members. Hey, I took my kid up to the splash park up at Central Station today. When are we going to get one of those?
Right.
And I'm just like, whenever you give me 600,000.
That's right. That's right. Solve all your problems with money. Jay, you got one?
Yeah. So full disclosure, I've never been to Oklahoma, but hearing about Gathering Place and hearing about the Trey Young Center, the Young Wellness Center, I definitely need to make a trip. But if I'm going to go to Norman and Tulsa, what is one restaurant I need to go visit? Because we always talk about food here. We haven't really done it yet today.
Burnco Barbecue.
Burnco? Okay.
Definitely barbecue.
If you know the story of Grant Hastings, Hasty Bake charcoal grills, manufactured in the United States for now 76 years, I think. I happen to be a Hasty Bake ambassador because I like to cook on them, so I teach cooking classes. All of that to say, when you take an Oklahoma-proven product, been designed, developed, manufactured right here in Oklahoma, Tulsa actually, and developed there for years and years and years. Their manufacturing shop and facility is right there in Tulsa. So after you eat at Burnco, you need to go visit Hasty Bake headquarters and tour their shop where they assemble all these Hasty Bake groups.
Cool.
Burnco Barbecue cooks on nothing but a Hasty Bake, and it's all right there inside.
Okay.
So you're kind of I'm a barbecue fan and fanatic, and if you're like a Texas barbecue connoisseur where you like to follow the top Texas monthly barbecue joints, Burnco Barbecue is just only because it's kind of unique to Oklahoma. It's a little bit different flavor in barbecue, but it's all live fire cooked right there on site that morning. You see the pitmaster and the owner, Adam Myers, and that would be definitely a place to go.
So, I'm not a skinny guy, so I'm very well versed in restaurants in Norman. Midway Deli, which I went to today, great sandwiches, pretty dang cool when you walk inside. We also, O'Connell's was way cooler when it wasn't on Campus Corner. Used to be right there in the corner of this, right where the football stadium is. We got Ray's Barbecue. Man, I can just go on and on. Love the restaurants here, and whenever you get down here, we're gonna hang out.
There you go.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
You're going to have a few days of food in your face.
Well, Mitchell brought us to the
That's what I want.
ranch rate on your list. So you don't
the ranch, that's like a Mitch must like you or something. Because, man, that ranch ain't cheap.
No, it's not.
But
it was good.
Stolen cows.
It's one of those things too. Is like Norman can't support a steakhouse, and that damn thing is packed every night. So it's a great anniversary place or a little one timer when you get friends to town. But when you come to Oklahoma, you got to definitely grab a steak.
Jay, Midway lets you. Then, if you're new, they'll give you a marker and you can write on the wall. And we wrote RecLess Pod.
Oh, that's cool.
It feels like
that's awesome.
So one last question, then we'll get y'all out. I've been telling Tom that even as someone that lives in Texas, that Oklahoma's got the best burgers. Where's your favorite burger in the state?
And then maybe if you just tell me, we're going to get a burger tonight, where am I going?
Hey, we hit up the garage here in Norman, Oklahoma. The original garage, if you've been to, they pop up they're in a lot of Big 12 college towns, but screw the Big 12. We don't worry about them. It's SEC, baby. So we're start working on those. But the original garage is right here in Norman. Absolutely just delicious hamburgers.
Yeah, my favorite hamburger joint closed in the Tulsa area. It was called Hardin's Hamburgers, but it's Greasy Bill's, maybe.
Greasy Bill.
It's literally a hole in the wall. It can sit maybe 7 folks. It's like an old diner, and you walk into it, and they're cooking the burgers right there in front of you on a flat top.
Well, guys, we really appreciate the time. Yeah, thank y'all so much.
You had 2 directors that rambled a lot. So
no,
Great.
great.
No, this was awesome.
Unplugging is the Eva
Unplugging.
Longoria movie. Jay, watch it tonight.
Don't Google it on your work desk.
yeah, you can look at the Rock film.
There you go.
That might be.
Check it out.
Don't
Let's
Google-
see if it's on Netflix.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Guys. We
Thank you,
appreciate it.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
guys.
Oklahoma. And we'll see you next time on RecLess.
See you next time on RecLess. All right. We're out. See ya.